Kashmir.
But the question really is, what do we mean when we say reforms? The idea, in a very, very simple way of stating what a reform should mean, is that it is an improvement over a better system. It's an improvement over a previous product. It's an improvement over a previous system. If that is the idea and the objective of a reform, what does India really need at this point in time? I think we often get confused when we talk about reforms as very simplistically boxing them into FDI-related reforms. Those are important, but are those really game changers? Do they materially change things on the ground is a question that we need to ask ourselves. If India does need big bang reforms, it needs reforms in administration, it needs reforms in governance, it needs reforms in its judiciary, it needs reforms in the way that we implement our policies, and all of those are indeed big bang reforms. But how much of time and bandwidth is given to those kinds of reforms? Look at the way that and the media is guilty of this as well. Look at the disproportionate manner in which we've talked about what has happened over the past fortnight, as if this is really a big game changer for India. As if opening up FDI and multi-brand retail is suddenly going to see deluge of dollars into the country. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen over the next 6 months. It will perhaps start to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. The question is, why don't we get our act together? Why do we get to a point when the Prime Minister has to come out and say that desperate times call for desperate measures? How did we get to desperate times in the first place? We got to desperate times in the first place because we didn't address systemic issues that have been staring us in the face for years now. Let me just give one example of the diesel subsidy. We finally made a big hue and cry about the fact that the government has hiked diesel prices by 5 rupees a litre. For over a decade now, we've had committee after committee, from B.K. Chaturvedi to Kirit Parikh, which was the latest committee, Kaushik Basu, the former chief economic advisor, giving you solutions, long-term solutions for what you need to do as far as your oil subsidies are concerned. Successive government after government have failed to actually take that on, have failed to make any of those changes. So we come back to a reactive policy. We come back to a short-term, quick-fix solution. Is that the idea of reforms? Is that what India really needs to do to be able to get to that 9–10% growth and to make that growth inclusive? Those are some of the questions that we hope that we will get our panelists here to answer. So let me start by asking you, Mr. Maira, because you were an outsider who's now part of the system. To your mind, are big bang reforms the only way forward, and how would you really define reforms for India at this point?
We need to have reforms along 2 tracks. One of the tracks is the set of reforms that we started in 1991, which was about opening up the country to investments from outside and more competition in industry. But the other track, on which we need progress much more and haven't had any progress, really speaking, is the track that you mentioned, reforms to do with management and governance. And on that is split into 2. One is coordination for implementation, getting things done. We must make decisions stick. As the finance minister said recently, there seems to be no final decision in the country. A group meets, decides, and then someone raises an objection, and it's not yet final. So that's one track. But the other track is very important, Shireen. That is a track on which we get the governance reforms and the reforms in which people are really affected, by which people are really affected. And in that there are 3 things. One of them is we must have more reforms which enable small enterprises to grow in different forms all over the country, because they will create self-employment, enterprises, ownership. That's what will create inclusive growth, rather than inclusion by giving handouts and subsidies.
Yeah.
We change the orientation. Number 2, we must get to more devolution and local management. We're trying too much to say that from the center we can manage our states, and the states can manage every village or every city from the top down. It's not going to work. We're too large and too diverse. The agenda is too large. We have to implement the 73rd and 74th Amendments, not just in letter, but in the spirit of making the organizations and people capable of managing themselves. And the third one comes to business again. We have to get a model of distributed production and distribution in terms of where our stuff is available also. Centralized production models, whether it's in power or anything, are not going to answer our problems. We need to have a network model of enterprise both in government as well as in business. So reforms along those three tracks will create inclusive growth and sustainable, because people will see their own incomes rising, themselves being included in the governance of what they are living with or whatever they are managing to. If you don't have trust in institutions, which is failing, trust in government as well as trust in big business, which is what's holding up the process of reforms. The political system has to respond to or take advantage of mistrust, and that is what is holding up our reforms. So track 2 is more necessary than ever before. If you don't have track 2 reforms, track 1 reforms will not proceed.
So just in terms of the track 2, because as you pointed out yourself and the finance minister articulated very well that we don't actually have a final decision that's ever taken as far as this country is concerned. You know, how many times have we heard about the government putting together a single window clearance for infrastructure? How many times have we heard the government talk about the planning commission will become the nodal commission that will talk to each ministry and sort out bottlenecks and hurdles to get infrastructure off the ground? What is the point of having another national infrastructure advisory board, which the Prime Minister will now look after, which will hopefully do all of the things that all of these other committees and all of these other people, including the Planning Commission, were supposed to do?
Well, I think the Finance Minister did make the right point. That just setting up a committee and saying, you know, you all are responsible, country matters to you all, get together and take a decision, is a necessary step, but it's not sufficient, because the allocation of business in government gives to ministries and ministers under the Constitution certain final responsibilities and rights. So if this group takes a decision and one ministry, let's say the environmental ministry, feels that it's going to really damage the environment, they're actually duty bound to say, I cannot allow this decision to proceed. So for certain size of projects or types of projects or programs, the allocation of business will have to be changed, and this body will have to be given the final power. I mean, thereafter,
the final power.
Yes, yes. That's going to be very necessary. Second is, which all people in business do well, you have boards and boards and boards. Every company has a board. Some boards function well, and some boards don't. All the boards have similar powers under the law. Those boards in which the conduct of the discussion and the decision making is such that you can hear contrary opinions, and in the interest of the corporation, take a decision and get an agreement, they produce results. Just putting a lot of people together in the board and then the chairman saying sometimes, you know, I don't like the way the discussion is going, I shall take the decision. There will be a reaction afterwards from that function or that division which says, we don't think it was the best decision. They will sabotage it in some way. So this is another thing that we need to learn, is how do you conduct a discussion and have a decision, which is a useful decision.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.
Manish Tiwari, let me ask you, and the Prime Minister said this, so this is what he acknowledged to the nation 24 hours ago, saying that we're in a desperate situation and desperate times call for desperate measures. How did we get to this point? We're suddenly comparing ourselves to Greece, and we're suddenly comparing ourselves to the European economies who are seeking a bailout. We were a country that was growing at over 9% till this year, till last year, and suddenly we're talking about not wanting to go down the Greece route. From policy paralysis to not taking even the most basic decisions, isn't it because we've had a government that was inactive that we find ourselves in a place that we are today?
So I said, first of all, we don't find ourselves between a hard place and a rock. And I think you really need to contextualize and put the Prime Minister's statement in a perspective. I was saying this earlier in the forenoon, that in 2008, you witnessed possibly the biggest global economic meltdown after the Great Depression of the 1930s. The arbitrage, derivatives, leverage-driven greed completely demolished the neoliberal economic model. So therefore, when the government came in 2009, there were naysayers, there were people who were advocating caution, there were people who were advocating circumspection, and there was genuine apprehension as to whether, this was the correct way forward. And I think it took a little while for things to really settle down, though of course they're still not settled. Europe continues to be in a...
It's taken you 3 years to settle down
it's not
for a
taken us
government in a second tenure?
It has not taken us 3 years to settle down. I think it has taken the global economy time to reconcile to the crisis and try and map a way forward. And as we speak, that still has not happened in the case of Europe, or it's still not happened in the case of the US, which is reeling under a $14 trillion deficit. It's not happened in the case of a lot of other producing economies, which are tanking because the consuming economies have gone down. So therefore, India is really not isolated from the global context. So under those circumstances, you paused, you introspected, and then you said that yes, you've consolidated and you must go ahead with the second wave of reforms, and that is where you are. And that's why I think the point which Mr. Mehra was making was absolutely correct. When you look at India, you don't look at India as a monolithic entity. There are parts of India which live in the 19th century, and there are parts of India which live in the 22nd century. And as a government, when you have to address this diversity, there is no one size fits it all.
I agree
so therefore, you require different techniques and different instrumentalities of intervention which address specific issues. And that is why, over the past 8 years, the biggest thing which the UPA government has done is it has built a rights-based entitlement structure whereby information, whereby education, whereby food and employment is guaranteed by the law. So therefore, on one hand, while we are trying to stimulate growth, you may accuse us that we should have done something in 2009, which we've done in 2012. But on one side, while we are trying to stimulate growth, on the other side, we are also taking care of equity, because if that equity is not taken care of, you will have a situation whereby those people are going to steamroll all the growth that you're trying to get out of the system.
Rajiv, let me come to you and ask you for your opening remarks on this issue.
We are a manager, we have a job to do, and we have to do our job whether the economy is in form, out of form, or in reform. So the point I'm trying to make is, beyond the point, it is not the prerogative of the manager to think too much about reform. We don't work on the system, we work in the system, and whatever be the system, we have to produce the best results relative to competition. So I think while we can always make a case for big bang reforms, there's a lot we can do ourselves. As Mahatma Gandhi said, we must be the change we want to see in the world. So let's start with each one of us. The reforms will come in time.
Chandra, opening comments from you before I move on.
I think we need to ask ourselves the question, if India has a huge potential, how do we make it as an exciting place so that we can realize that potential? That does not require once in a while big bang action. That requires basic things, that requires a culture. I think to Rajesh's point, growth is a culture. We need to fundamentally believe that we have to grow, and India is probably the only country which has the opportunity to play a 2020 game.
Absolutely, we need to get our act together. Sanjeev Goenka, what do you think can be done in order for us to have a more certain, to have a more consistent and a growth culture, as Chandra was talking about?
Quite honestly, I think we need to move away from the politics of opposition. Opposing for the sake of opposing is wrong. One must oppose if you fundamentally oppose a thought. We need a reformation of the mindset. We need to get away from a situation where the government needs to micro-regulate everything to a situation where the government controls things at a macro level. From one of being regulation-oriented to one of being facilitation-oriented. But having said that, we in industry, I think there are enough examples of companies which have performed. There are enough examples of companies which have grown. And there are enough examples of companies which will continue to grow. So I think, yes, we may have certain demands, we may have certain desires, but it is not as if industry is not and will not grow.